All right, guys, welcome back. CFP here, and this is Survival Living. So today we have Praxis Homestead and Survival Skills. Praxis Prepper, in case you guys don't know who he is. I have to check my audio and everything on my end, make sure everything's working correctly. You know how it goes. I'm not tech savvy at all. I got great sideburns, but I don't know nothing about computers and cell phones. So give me a quick second. I do see we have a lot in chat, so I have to follow along with additional cell phones so I can make sure I can see everything. So it looks like audio is working. Okay. So I've asked Praxis to come on here and join us on this live stream tonight. One thing right fast, guys, I ran into Praxis years ago by watching Canadian Prepper. Canadian Prepper had done a All-American Prepper skit a long time ago, and Praxis was on it, and I laughed my rear end off because of everything that he was putting on there. And that's when I subbed to his channel a long time ago, and I've gotten to work with Praxis on his Alien Invasion series, with a season 2 anyway. And that's what he's mostly known for, unfortunately, is because all the film work he's been doing, all the technical stuff he's been doing to creating that series, which was a lot of work, by the way. Most people just kind of like been watching that, and they're not really watching what else he's teaching. And I asked him to come here today so I can actually go over these survival skills, the prepping, homesteading, all these different aspects that he's actually incorporating in his channel. And a lot of people kind of like blow by it, honestly, instead of actually seeing what's all going on. And I kind of want him to, talk about his channel with you guys. And, we're going to be keeping an eye on the chat. If you got questions for him or me, we'll try to our best anyway to answer it. I will say this much. He is a lot more educated than I am. See right there. So
I think I just come off that way.
Insight on some things. Yeah. So anyway, you want to say hello? That'd be great.
Hi. Well, I really appreciate you having me on here. It's nice to get in touch with a larger audience. I've done some live streams on my channel. I think we topped out at maybe 15 people on the live stream. So, it's kind of a niche audience. I see one person that used to pop on a lot, Odd Prepper. I want to welcome her to this live stream. But it's just nice to reach out to more people because one of the benefits of having a small audience is that you also have a small population of trolls. So you can appreciate that that's kind of a nice thing. But, one of the downsides obviously is that, you and I both put a lot of effort into making these channels and, we want to get information out to people, for many reasons. One that I always talk about is just that it's great to get more people in the world prepared for things because, even if just for selfish reasons, the more people in your area, in your community that are prepared, the less things are bad for you also if you got less people that are desperate around you. So it's nice to get this stuff out to people, and it's nice to reach more people when we do this stuff.
Yep, I agree with you on that. I mean, the more people we get prepared, the less marauder scenarios we're going to be dealing with. Granted, though, we can't prepare everybody. I mean,
No.
You and me, as far as, finances and stuff like that, we can't get everybody ready. And most people are closed-minded to a lot of things right off the bat. And beyond that, there's a lot of individuals that are out there that don't really see preparedness as more than just stacking up some canned goods. I know they're not willing to push themselves and actually, I see that a lot where you'll be trying to show something and I don't want to hear that. I'd rather just die. I'm like, well, that's a big possibility. I mean, we can only lead a horse to water. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I definitely see that a lot. It's just one of those things. As far as trolls, well, hate to break it to you, I got a bunch of them, and they'll be over there later. Trust me on that.
I've heard some. I've heard your reaction to some of your trolls. I mean, I've had them in the past too, and I'm one of those people that just. I can't leave it alone. If someone's going to act like an idiot, I'm going to respond to them in a way that allows them to fully demonstrate that in the dialogue. And I guess the worst part is just sort of waste my time because I like poking people that are angry. So there's that. But they're really just they're really just hurting themselves, really. I mean, the trolls out there, it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't hurt me. It's just sort of them wasting their own time and kind of validating the fact that they are wasting their time.
Yeah, no, I can see that. As a YouTube creator, it's easy to get frustrated really quick with certain things that are said. Homestead, good to see you, my friend. How are you doing? I see you down there in the chat. Homestead's been with us for a while. For everybody that is here, I appreciate you guys being here with us. Like I said earlier, well, the last couple of months, I'm actually focusing more on trying to get connected with some of these other YouTube preppers and survivalists and things, and I want to give them more exposure on the channel. One is because they've already been vetted. All right, I mean, I don't know if you've been to the vet or not, but anyway, they've always been one of those people that I can always go to and actually see that they know what they're talking about. All right, and this is what we're trying to incorporate more on people that are authorities in what they're saying. I'm like Praxis here. He's already been working. He's been working on it for a while. His own homestead, as far as building his home from the ground up. I mean, that's been a very long series that he's been doing. But the fact is, when you're doing it yourself and you're putting in all the work, it takes time. And he did step by step, explaining every single bit of that. And that's not just it. I mean, I've seen you with the parabolic cooker and everything else like that. And I think my favorite video of all videos you've ever done was the collecting solar power using the moon with a special spray. And I fell for it. I fell for it. I'm like, what is this? And I'm sitting looking up, and of course it was released on April Fools of all places. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I still occasionally get angry comments about that. I'm just like, dude, what do you expect? It's solar power.
Hilarious. I was all over that thing. I'm like, yeah. What doesn't make any sense. How a spray? I don't know. April Fools. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've got a pretty good solar setup yourself over there. It looks like you're already pretty far down that line on your own. The one thing, I will say, the one thing that bothers me about your solar array is that it's missing that one panel up in the corner. And actually, now that I've got you, how did you allow that to happen? That would have bothered me so much, having that missing gap.
Okay, so that solar array is not my solar array. That was when we went to go travel. We were leaving Central Florida and we were heading to Wyoming to start a homestead out there. And we bent a spindle in our trailer and we got stuck here outside Panama City. But we have family here. So we parked it out and stuff and the whole pandemic and everything. So I'm like, you know what? I'm staying right here. And we saw the lumber price go through the roof. I'm like, I'm not moving. But anyway, this individual had already made contracts with a solar farm company. And they came in and they built it. And when I was asking about it, it doesn't even go to her home. She gets a set power bill for the next 20 years. And if there's a storm and knocks everything out, which happens all the time down here in Florida, she has no power. None. It's not even gridded in. My solar grid is on the trailer. We have 800 watts on the trailer, and that's what we live out of. We have that 6x12 cargo trailer we were traveling with that we converted. So we live off that. It runs our air conditioning unit. Everything's timed out. You know, we can run AC all day long. We can only run it by 6 hours at night now with our battery banks, but we can run everything with that. I still haven't found the moonlight spray in a can. I'm looking for it. It's just not there. But that one grid there, and that's what it was. I was surprised they had one panel missing. I kept looking at them like, where's the other panel? Oh, she only wanted so many out here. That's what the contract's for. I'm like, that looks stupid.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's really wonderful once you swap over to solar, and I'm sure you know this, and it sounds like you've had the learning curve on it as well. I've got timers all over the place here. You know, there's dehumidifier that goes between this time and this time, and the hot water here that goes between this time and this time. Mechanical timers are just such a great pairing with the solar panels, because you generally know when you're going to be getting your peak stuff, and you can be running things when you got more electricity than you know what to do with. It's such a great asset. I've only been on it for about half a year at this point, and man, I'm really kicking myself that I didn't do it sooner.
Yep, I agree with you. And, it's a startup. Most people, they see the huge arrays and they look at the price and they're looking at $20,000, $30,000. And if you actually look into it, it's really not hard to understand, and you can actually build it yourself so much cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
The big cost, of course, is that big inverter. And, as preppers, we like having extras of everything. But, just starting off, the battery banks are the biggest. So my battery banks, they're solar batteries, but they're the flood acid batteries that are sealed. All right. So they're maintenance free, 7 to 10 years, give or take. That's what they say. But we've been using ours for 3 years now. We haven't had any issues. We did have a weird disturbance about a year ago. It was weird. I don't know if it was the sun, whatever, but all my charge controllers had tripped. They had to, I had to manually go in and reset them all. And then we got involved with the EMP shield on, protecting our charge controllers and stuff. But that was before we got hold of that. And it was the weirdest thing. Everything had reset. I was completely dead, but I did have power supply, but the connection between my solar and my battery bank was offline. I'm like, and I actually had to go and manually reset it. And it showed the time, and it happened at night, which was weird. But solar activity doesn't just mean it's daytime. It happens. It's still traveling. So we had that issue, but it didn't burn up anything.
I was going to say that's a great example of why it's so important that people start preparing for things, ahead of time instead of waiting till the 11th hour on everything. Because, you've got your system up and you went through that experience, and it was a pain in the ass when you were doing it, I'm sure. And it wasn't anything like, oh, great, wonderful, I've got this, problem to deal with. But after the fact, what a great learning experience. And like, if that thing ever kind of happens again, you're going to know exactly how to deal with it. And it's so great to be fixing those kind of problems and getting that education now, instead of, when you got marauders shooting at your door and you got to deal with this and you got to deal with that. You get the value of the internet. You could you'll look up a solution to it and everything. So it's so important that people start this stuff early.
Yep, I definitely agree with you. And, I try to tell people you can start building them. Start small. You can always expand on these things. I mean, it's nothing that you have to go drop $20,000 right off the bat. Now, if you want to be 100% off the grid, it's going to cost money, but it's not going to cost 20 grand to build a system. And I think a lot of people need to understand they're not trying to operate a whole house like every single light in the house is on. And I don't mean the song. Everything's timed out with solar. You know how much what your input's coming in, like you said, your peaks. And you everything's timed. I mean, I can run a microwave if I want to, but I also, with my limited supply of power that I usually get stored up, if I run that microwave, I know I'm going to be cutting my air conditioner down too. So, with the battery bank system I have, it's only expanded so much. But CJ Blaze, good to see you, my friend. One of our mods there is a great moderator. We got a lot of our mods here. South Florida, I did see your comment. We got your wrench back up, my friend. We had a hiccup when I was trying to remove trolls, actually, and I was trying to remove a lot of stuff on my end. And there was a couple mods that got demodded. So when I see them, I'm trying to get you guys hooked back up. I had over 800 and some trolls blocked on my channel, and I was going through trying to. I usually, when I block people, I do it for a while, and I go back and then I release them. If they come right back with their mouth, then they're forever blocked. So when I was trying to do all that stuff on a cell phone, a couple of my mods got unmodded. They didn't get blocked though, so that's a good thing. See here. Scrolling through here. So Praxis Prepper, guys, his channel is in the description of the video here. So guys, like I said, I'm trying to reach out to more of the authoritative people that I know what they are about and how they're actually doing preparedness levels. And this is one that I do support, and I really do appreciate it if you guys go over and subscribe. But don't just subscribe to a channel. Watch the videos, leave a comment. That stuff is what pushes people back into the Al Gore got no rhythm. Yeah, that's all you want a video on that. Certain phrases gets you hemmed up on this platform. It's just one of those things, and it's one thing that we have to navigate, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've tried to start dancing the dance a little bit, and I'm trying to actually enjoy some of the euphemisms for things and have a little bit of fun with it. I don't know if you think this would be valuable. I could give people a little bit of background on what they can expect over at my channel. Because there's some things that I'm fairly proficient at, and other things that I don't really get into much over at my channel. What I tend to talk about a lot is like the homesteading kind of stuff, especially building and construction. I've built a couple of houses. The house I'm in right now is the second large house that I've ever built. It's my kind of version 2.0 of a homestead. I built another one back in 2004 and worked really, really well. But it's, whenever you try something, it's trial and error, and there's no better education than making mistakes. So, I improved all those things in this place. I've built a couple of small houses. So I do a lot of construction type of stuff. And we have a fallout shelter or a root cellar at this new place that we've just moved into. So that's really the focus on my channel, is kind of, using the landscape around you, using the tools that you have, and kind of building and creating a life support sort of system for yourself that is disconnected as much as possible from the things in the world that we know aren't always reliable. And that's what I do a lot of on my channel. In fact, the video that I released tonight, I always release a video every Friday at 4:30, and the video tonight is all about a simple way of building any kind of a structure using the technique that I built all my big houses with, but I shrunk it down, and we're actually building with popsicle sticks on it. And I go through building an entire shed using this kind of popsicle stick structure, but it's expandable where you could build a shed with it, you could build a garage with it, you could build a house with it, and just knowing this kind of basic technique, you can expand it out and, you know, build whatever you need. And you really don't need a lot oftentimes. I think, you know, camping is a great illustration of, you know, what you really need for survival. You go camping, you know what you need, you know what you might have forgotten really fast. And oftentimes you can get by with not very much.
Yeah, when you forget something, yeah, that sucks. It really does. I did see that as the video released earlier today. I didn't know about your time. I remember you used to do a live stream at a specific time back in the day when I first started watching you and stuff.
Oh, okay.
I did see the video today with the popsicle sticks. I was watching that while I was working on everything else. Usually when I see a comment, yeah, it's like an hour. I just leave it playing, and it'll be playing in the background while I'm doing something else.
Yeah,
that's another option. If a video is too long for you guys, you want to try to support somebody, that right there, just let it play. Do whatever you want to. You know, if you can't hang out and just listen to what someone's trying to say. That's one of the reasons I keep the live streams down to an hour, and I try to keep most of my videos down to like 10 to 15 minutes, and that's it. Sometimes we'll get into the 30-minute videos, and the view duration comes back as 2 minutes and 27 seconds. I'm like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
So that happens. But yeah, so Praxis was he was the guy that I was working with on that one clip I did a while back. Was the airsoft guns and all camoed out and everything. That was for the alien invasion where I had the body parts and stuff. So if you guys missed that, it's in the playlist, but you can always go over there and check out his actual series there, which I recommend going to the very first series, watching all the way through. Mainly because he's incorporated other YouTube preppers and people that he's met online and stuff that, you know, got the guest star and stuff, and well, guest appearance, I should say. Yeah, I think they stars you for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of great people. I mean, yourself, obviously, towards the end. Canadian Prepper was on for one. We've had Prepper Potpourri. I know I'm going to forget people. A lot of great people have been involved, and I felt it's been a really great way of trying to teach some prepping and preparedness and survival lessons with kind of a fun context that there's an alien invasion going on, and you know, I think it makes it more fun.
Well, it's actually a very smart way of doing it, because I watch sci-fi stuff. I do. I'll admit it. I do. And it kind of drew me in. I'm like, this might be interesting. And it wasn't just a sit down one, like how you did it. You took a scenario, you had to collect water or boil water, or you had to make shelter, or you had to disinfect, all those different things. And you were on the move, like in season 2, you're on the move, having to showing growing food, things like that, while you're trying to get on the move. In the first season, the Dakota Fire Pit. But it wasn't just like one of my boring things. I'm sitting out in the woods. You've got a possible attacker coming at you. The scenario is just like people are chasing you while you're doing certain things. And the pros and cons of a Dakota Fire Pit compared to having a big old blazing fire. And then, you know, you actually broke down the practicality of, does it take longer, stuff like that, than, you know, throwing into a coal bed. So yeah, I like how you actually combined everything together. And that's one of the things when I started with my channel, especially my outdoor videos, I took tips from watching guys like you, Les Route, how he's done his camera angles and stuff. And that's how I was trying to watch how you guys were doing things, because it was more in depth. That's what kept me looking and going, okay, attention span is dropping, but that's keeping my attention. And unfortunately, we're all human, so our attention span does drop from time to time.
Yeah.
Crafty Veteran, I definitely do appreciate the super chat there, brother. Here's a gallon of gas for you.
Yeah, you better buy it quick before it doesn't buy it anymore.
Yeah, it's right at $5 a gallon here down here in Florida. And congratulations on your 1,000 subscribers, guys. I did put a community post. I believe it was yesterday. He was doing his 1,000 subscribers celebration. So
cool. That's a fun number to hit.
It is an awesome number to hit. So hopefully it continues, and then you'll have a whole bunch of comments to answer every night. All right, so I'm going to throw a couple things at you, trip you up a little bit. No, I'm not going to do that. What is, if you can take one scenario right now as a SHTF scenario that is very plausible, what would you think would be the thing we're going to be facing next as far as something
most
major
likely.
SHTF? Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, well, you know, with the Alien Invasion series, we go big with the spectacular types of things. But in the real world, it seems historically that when things fall apart for civilizations, and that is the one constant with civilizations, is that they have a rise and they always have a fall. It's never a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. That fall is always kind of fluffy and amorphous and a lot slower than I think a lot of people imagine. You know, in films, and my background's in film and video, and you know, I've done television and movies and things, and whenever, like, you know, people like me do those types of things, there's a rule of thumb when you're writing a script, is that if you can have something instead of having something happen over a year, if you can have it happen over a month in the storyline, that's better, it's tighter, it's more exciting. If instead of having it happen over a month, you can have it happen over a week, that's better, it's tighter, it's more exciting. You know, and you just keep going down. If you can crunch all those events of a week down into a day, it's just much more exciting. And the side effect of that is that whenever disaster movies are done by Hollywood, it's always like 48 hours, and that, you know, the world goes from completely normal to completely upside down, you know, post-apocalyptic nightmare zone. And you know, the way the world really tends to work, if you read history, isn't that. It's these kind of soft kind of degradations over time, where you almost don't even notice, like the frog in the hot water that keeps boiling, then the frog doesn't hop out. As I understand that scientific experiment has actually been done, and the frog is smart enough to hop out. It's just humans that don't tend to be smart enough to hop out of the water. But you know, the way I see things going down is that kind of soft, slow decline, where you hardly even notice that it's happening, and it happens as you know, your economy starts to fall apart, you know, and I think we're certainly seeing that. And it happens as your environment starts to fall apart. And I know in the current world, that's seen as being a little controversial about, you know, whether there's environmental changes happening in the planet. But if you look back through history, humans almost always kind of destroy whatever environmental situation was holding them up. And that, you know, that can go back to Rome or the Syrians or, you know, the Mayans. You know, they're always, you know, their civilization was thrust into the light because they had like really awesome resources of like lye plaster, or, you know, a great forest, until they cut the whole thing down. And it's kind of a recurring theme in human civilizations, is that we find something awesome, we use all of it, and then when it's gone, we're like, oh geez, I guess it was that stuff that was making everything so wonderful for us, and it wasn't just because we were so, you know, amazing and unique and wonderful. You know, so I see, you know, that as being another factor where, you know, we are depending on the systems of the world being what they are, and as those kind of change and degrade and devolve, you know, our living standard continues to do that. And that's kind of the way that I see things going. It isn't, you know, one overnight kind of like flip upside down collapse, but kind of a slow degradation. And then, you know, the way people react to that can have those kind of sudden you know, flipping upside down kind of reactions where, you know, people can keep getting pushed and pushed and pushed and more stress, and then they kind of snap. And that's when you kind of get those, you know, the riot breaks out. You know, one day everything's calm, and then the next day there's a riot. But in terms of the underlying mechanics of what's pushing all of it, I see it as just sort of a slow change over time. And you can look at it as collapse, and I do call it collapse, and I look at it as collapse. But it's also okay to just look at it as change, because, you know, like I mentioned, it's a cycle that humans have got themselves caught up in, where they rise and they fall and then they rise again. So, you know, the whole idea of prepping, for me, is to understand there's going to be those bumps in the road where, you know, there's, you know, that up and then that down, and to plan accordingly for that kind of those drop moments when, you know, your car tire goes into a pothole, so that, you know, it doesn't completely ruin your day, that you can kind of get through it and wait till the next day. So that's kind of how I look at those things.
All right, I can see where you're coming from there, because I've actually discussed what I call a slow slip SHTF, and yeah, I will agree. We have been, and we're seeing it more and more. never really thought about the aspect of how civilization's always repeated itself. And if you actually look at it from that type of angle, it actually makes a lot of sense, because every great nations throughout histories have always had a prime, and something's always happened to drop it back down. Many different reasons for that. I mean, like you said, resources, also disease, conflicts, stuff like that. It's always something that's always a cycle through. We always try to prep for as many different scenarios as possible. That's for sure. I do want to take the time right fast to address a couple things right quick. August Rain, definitely do appreciate the super chat and supports. Your comment was for preps for emergency buckets. We do appreciate that. We're actually doing very well on that. As a matter of fact, this Monday I am going to one of my local mission houses, and I'm actually going to be speaking with them about what more I can do in my community to help them with resources, and especially when it comes to hurricane season down here. So this is something that we're reaching out to them. So I'll be speaking with them on Monday and seeing what they're lacking in and what they need extra help on. So that does help us out, especially with the survival buckets. Those are buckets that we're putting together to actually hand off after hurricane disasters, food, fuel, stuff like that is in these buckets. It's only a 5-gallon bucket, but there's a lot of stuff in it. Bible Talk 777, definitely do appreciate you being here. High Peeps is coming soon, so get your stuff now. It's almost too late. Well, and that's always debatable about our timetable on this stuff. I'm not arguing that it's something major is happening. I see it all the time. It seems like more and more stuff is happening. Everything for SHTF could be a personal SHTF event, from job loss, house fire. I've been through both of those. To hurricanes, natural disasters, earthquakes. All these things will affect somebody directly, and having preps and supplies is a huge aspect on it. And of course, the major events. I have no control over major events. Neither does anybody else, at least not watching here. What we can do is make sure we have a plan and preparations to deal with whatever threat comes our way. We got control over that, unless something drops out of the sky and flattens everything that you're standing on.
But then
if
you
that
don't
doesn't
have to worry
happen,
about that.
Yeah, you don't even have to worry about purifying water. You're just gone. All right, make sure you're right with the big man upstairs on that one. But the other events that we deal with a daily life thing, and that's one of the biggest thing about prepping, is that when we get hit with these things, we know what to do. I mean, let's say that you are a collector of silver and gold bullion. Okay, let's just say that for an example, and you lost your job today. You got finances that's ready to go. I don't leave money in the bank, but we keep stacks of cash. All right, not a lot of cash, but we keep stacks of cash. That way we have something bartered with we can operate with. Just like when we had the whole the shutdown stuff. I don't like using that word either, because that's not a word they like to let us talk about on this platform.
I didn't know that one.
They when they gave us curfews, where we go, when they gave us curfews, when I went to go cash my check and stuff from the company that I was working at that laid me off because of it, we had to go strictly through drive-through. The ATMs were shut off. We couldn't draw money out of the bank, and we were limited on how much we could actually withdraw from our bank accounts. So they would cash my check, but if I wanted access to what I was in my bank account, I'd have to go around and try to find other ATMs, because the bank one was locked down, and they had a police officer stationed in a squad car right there in front of the lobby. Every time I went to the bank, there was a squad car. So I can't tell anybody what to do. I see the security of having money in the bank. I do. As a prepper, what I do here, and I just talk about what I do. I keep money on hand. I keep money on the bank just to pay my bills online. Other than that, I don't leave it over there. I don't leave things in safety deposit box. I had a conversation with one of our subscribers. They were talking about the precious metals and stuff. They quit putting it in the store safety deposit box because during the curfew time, they had no access to it. They couldn't get in. So I leave that up to everybody else on that. Me personally, I don't. So
yeah, I'm right there with you on that. If you don't have your hands physically on it, your control over it is not absolute. I diversify. I have metals, I have cash, I have bank assets, but I always have the awareness that those bank assets are only as available to me as the bank wishes to make them to me, and I'm at peace with that. But you know, I diversify, so not everything's there. So if the bank ever decides this isn't yours anymore, I've got other options.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And something more down to earth for people, because I understand I'm in the position now where I can start ramping up investments and stuff like that. Well, not the stock market, guys. I don't play that anymore. I was doing penny stocks and I did very well on that, and $700 to a good is well for me. All right, but and I don't do crypto either because I don't trust that thing. But if you want to, that's up to you. Something more practical is food. Okay, and not just stockpiling food, because we're preppers. We stockpile a lot of stuff, put things in rotational stock. But as I know you were talking about in one of your recent videos, that you're clearing out some land there, actually doing stuff, not just stocking stuff. I mean, you're actually making sure that you cut back the shade that's affecting your garden. All right.
Yeah.
So growing food, learning those skills, because I'm going to ask you, when you first went to go do a garden, how was the results you had? Just straight out of the gate, I'm going to go grow a garden this year.
Yeah, well, that's the big thing. And the idea of stacking food, that's a great prep, but all that does is buy you time, because eventually, no matter how much food you set aside, well, I guess depending on your age, maybe you'll outlive your prep pile, but eventually it's going to be gone. And unless you can be self-sufficient and regenerating that, it is only just a temporary kind of thing. So, gardening and farming is something that we all have to have in our back pocket, if we have any sense that there would ever be anything that was going to last any degree of time. So yeah, I've been doing gardening for many years, and I'm not a particularly good gardener. I'll be blunt about that. I do trial and error every year, and some years are good, some years are bad. But you know what? Just knowing that, I think, makes me a better gardener. Knowing that not every year is easy makes me a better gardener. I may not necessarily be great at growing potatoes, but knowing that I'm not necessarily going to be great at growing potatoes makes me better at planning about how to grow potatoes. Because if I'm the kind of person that's never gardened before, and I open up some book and I'm like, oh, well, it says you need so many potatoes per year to survive, and each potato is going to give you X number of potatoes, you'll be an idiot, and you'll find out it's like, well, I need 480 potatoes, so that means I have to grow 7 potato plants, and that's exactly what you'll put in the soil, not knowing, the chances that, some of those are going to fail, or you have other issues with that. So I think that failure in your past is a really great asset, because it informs you about the things that, you need to understand it may not go really well for you, like gardening for me.
No, exactly. I mean, I grew up on farmland, and we've always gardened, we've always farmed, stuff like that. I grew up in North Carolina. We had tobacco farms. I mean, there was always a summer job, spring job that anybody could go work at. They didn't care about what your age was. And yeah, you'll be surprised at just the simplest thing from weather destroying crops. I mean, back in the day, everyone had all the industrial fertilizers and, weed killers and insect stuff. When it comes down to it, you're fighting. I mean, we tried growing in a straight organic garden one year. It was a nonstop fight on the weeds, nonstop.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of manual work.
Yep. And when the bugs came in, yeah, there are things you can do, but if you don't have those supplies stocked up, and you're going to need that to survive on, yeah, it's very difficult. I encourage people to get out there and try to grow and learn from those mistakes, because we all make them. I mean, maybe there are some people that are naturally born a gardener and a farmer that just, no matter what, they can read it. They're the gardener whisperer, I guess you could say. But yeah, I had to throw that one at you, because I know you talked about it before about your garden stuff, and I know that you're working on your garden here recently. So I just had to throw that one at you. I watch your channel. I stalk your channel all the time. So just so you know.
Well, I do. This year is probably the most serious I've ever been about gardening ever. And it's not just because it's really a matter of timing. I just finished my house. Now I finally have the freedom to start focusing on that. And I've always just kind of tooled around with it and learned about how inept I am at it. This is the first year where I'm really taking it seriously and making sure that the weeds don't choke everything out. And honestly, a lot of the weeds in the past have been my best crops. I'm big into wild edible plants, and you'd be surprised how many weeds that grow in the garden are actually probably more nutritious than whatever crop you're actually trying to grow there. So a lot of times when I'm weeding, I'm actually eating while I go.
Just grazing along.
Yeah.
I want to thank our mod CJ Blaze. Thank you so much for working real hard in the chat, taking care of any issues that you see. I stand behind our mods. If my mod make a decision to remove somebody or any comment, I stand 100% behind them. So just so everybody knows, that gets all ticked off, I stand behind my mods. So let's see here. You got anything that you want to, kind of cover, anything like that before? And also, guys, make sure you put the @ symbol, Survival Living, so it lights up orange on my screen. I know you're asking a question. And if you guys have questions for Praxis, please put it in. We'll read it off and see if we can't trip them up a little bit. Don't do that. Play nice, everybody. Play nice.
I'm happy to play the buffoon if that's what reality
That's
suggests.
my job. That's my job.
Yeah. Trying to think if there's anything that we haven't touched on that I think is really important. I mean, we talked about the importance of practicing this stuff early, and I think that that's something I'm seeing a lot of on my channel. Is that there's a degree of desperateness, I think, that's starting to express itself in the population, where people are starting to realize that what we've been told in terms of the perpetual stability of our society was maybe a little bit rose-colored when that was delivered to us. And I think people are starting to to realize that in a lot of situations we really are on our own, and we have our neighbors and we have our friends and we have our networks and everything. But I think a lot of times people always just taken for granted that when push comes to shove, the government's going to be there to help you out. And there have just been so many examples over the past several years, several decades, that are constantly reminding people that that's not the case. And maybe that shouldn't be the case. Maybe it's better if in a society there's the social contract that people collectively will come together and try to handle some problems. And maybe it's better that some problems are left to the individual. And I think in our society we've gotten away from accepting that responsibility for all of us. And I don't think it's necessarily a failing of society if it's not going in there to wipe your butt and wipe snot off your face all the time. I think it's appropriate that some things are left to the individual. But for people who have not been raised with that in mind, I think it can be kind of frightening. It's almost like finding out that Santa Claus isn't real. Or something, where you have this idea that there was this safety net that was always out there, and then to look over the precipice and see that it wasn't there. I mean, that's it's kind of disturbing, and I'm seeing that start to manifest in some of the comments on the channel, where people that clearly had never thought about this before are at least starting to be a little jarred by the fact that they're noticing that those nets maybe aren't there.
Yeah. Well, first thing I want to address is I know Santa Claus is real because I caught my mama and Santa Claus. So I'm just saying right now, it wasn't a figment of my imagination.
I don't want to burst any bubbles here. So.
Yeah, next thing you're going to tell me Easter Bunny's not real. Yeah, right. So I got a couple questions here. Crafty Veteran, this is actually for you. Number one vegetable to grow for a new gardener for prepping.
All right. Well, that really depends on your region, and not to pass the buck to someone else, but I have an answer for you. But I would definitely say take my answer, but also talk to people at like your local garden centers. I don't mean like the chain store where it has like some high school student that doesn't know what they're talking about. Go to an actual garden center and talk to somebody that looks like they're maybe over 18 and, get a real answer for them, because, locally in different areas, there are going to be different crops that work better than others. But for myself in my area, I live in New England, a great mix of crops, and I'm not just going to give you one, I'm going to give you a couple of them, are some type of a squash. That could be a pumpkin, it could be a spaghetti squash or a butternut squash. Some type of a squash is a great source of vitamins. Some kind of a squash plant would probably be something good to grow. Some type of a legume, I'm going to recommend maybe pole beans, some kind of a vining bean. Those tend to work really well. You stick some sticks in the ground and the beans will crawl right up the sticks. That's going to be a source of protein for you, also a source of fiber for you. So some type of a bean. In addition to that, I'd add some sort of a grain. And that's where I'd throw some options out to you. A lot of people like corn. Corn in my area oftentimes is a little problematic just because we have so much forest here. You have to clear so much land to get the space for corn. So if corn isn't something that appeals to you necessarily, potatoes are a really good one. You know, potatoes are something that has a lot of calories. Corn has calories, potato has calories. So those three together, and the corn, beans, and squash is known as like I think it's called like the Three Sisters or something like that. The Native Americans in my region used to plant that as a way of getting kind of a full nutritional hit from, you know, a compact piece of land, because the corn gets tall and the beans, the whole beans will kind of vine up the corn stalks, and the potatoes, or I'm sorry, not potatoes, the pumpkins will kind of grow down in the shadowy areas, and they'll stay a little bit moister in the shadow of some of those plants. So it's kind of a nice mix. So some kind of a grain, some kind of a legume, and some kind of a squash, because they're high in vitamins.
Well, that's a good answer on that. And like you said, it just depends on where you're located at as far
Absolutely.
as timing and everything else. Yeah, I have noticed that green beans and corn work very well together, especially with the nitrogen between, you know,
Yes.
one needs it, one doesn't, one produces it.
Yeah.
So
and if I could
works
just
very
jump in,
well.
one other thing with the nitrogen, in terms of if you have a lawn and you're thinking about you know, turning that lawn into garden space, one great source of nitrogen for your soil is any type of clover, like anything in the clover family. Those are in the pea family, which are a type of legume, and those are going to be adding nitrogen to your soil. So personally, when I'm weeding my garden, because clover plants are not particularly tall, you know, they're not going to shade things out too much, I usually actually leave the clover in my garden, because they're going to be a bit of a cover, they're going to keep the soil a little bit moister, and they're adding that kind of nitrogen hit into the soil, so that, you know, it's making the garden have more nutrients for the next year. And incidentally, on the topic of edible plants, not all clover, some clover family plants are edible, but not all of them are, and some of them are actually toxic. So if you're nibbling through your garden, don't go nibbling the clover. Some of them are going to be fine, but some of them can actually be pretty dangerous.
Yep. Yeah, we used to eat clover when we were up in Maryland doing some training and stuff out there. We're younger, but we're always doing some type of survival training.
Yeah.
Some you can, some you can't. So
Yeah,
make sure
dangerous.
you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be able to identify the stuff. That's why when it comes to foraging, I tell everybody, get with somebody. Don't just read a book, because the pictures in books are so crappy. I haven't really come across a very good book with high def on multiple seasons of a plant, and you go, oh yeah, this is such and such, and get with somebody. Same with mushrooms. Make sure you're with it.
Oh, yeah.
I think the botanist, yeah, make sure you actually there with someone to actually train with it, because just because you have a book on something, it can get you killed. So
yeah. I'm actually in my library. You can probably tell behind me. I'm wired, so I'm not going to go over and grab it. I do have a favorite book about wild edible plants. And do you mind if I have a really ugly shot and I'll grab the book? Because I would really highly recommend it. It's right back behind me. Let's see how long of a tether I gave myself. All right. Yeah. So this is my favorite wild edible plant book. Right there, and it's made by Thomas Elias and Peter A. Dykman. And what I really love about this wild edible book is that to your point about you know, being really sure that you have what you think you have, so you're not accidentally ingesting something that's poisonous. That's a really good point. One of the great things about that particular book is that while there are some wild edible plants that you know, have that kind of danger to them, there are other wild edible plants that they don't have anything that looks like them that is dangerous. There might be other things that look like them that aren't them, but those other things aren't dangerous. So there are some wild edible plants, if you're interested in getting into wild edibles, that are actually pretty easy to identify. And even if you misidentify it, as long as you're not like literally blind and you're grabbing something that looks completely different, you're at least not going to poison yourself. So there are some easy ones. For example, dandelions. Dandelions, I think pretty much everyone knows what dandelions look like. Dandelions are edible. Every part of the plant is edible. It's not necessarily delicious, but it is edible. And there's some other things like that. Here in North America, if you see anything that looks like a raspberry, it may not be a raspberry, and there are many things that look like raspberries that aren't raspberries, but there are no plants that have the growth characteristics of raspberries and have raspberry-like berries on the ends of them that are poisonous. So, you know, if you're interested in getting into wild edible plants, it's possible to kind of start with some easy ones, and you can just stay with the easy ones for your whole life, and then maybe kind of tiptoe into some of the trickier ones later. But there's a good half a dozen or a dozen really, really easy wild edible plants, and you don't have to know all about plants to start nibbling at some of those.
Oh, yeah. And that book actually, my brother's got a copy of that, and I actually have a very old copy of that. I got
I have
that.
the old copy too. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the
love
old
that
copy
book,
when
yeah.
I was young, like 12, 13 and stuff. Yeah, I used to run around with mine all the time. And
Yeah. I keep mine in my backpack all the time.
Yeah, some of the plants that I had in there weren't in my region at all, and I was really getting frustrated because I had like
Okay.
stagcorn and dandelions. You know, I didn't have a lot of the stuff that they had there, but yeah, I mean, some books are good. I still
Well, it works in
recommend.
New England anyway.
Yeah, I still recommend making sure you know what you're munching on, because I've had
Yeah.
some bad food before, and it's just no fun. I did want to address something right fast. Blue Vanda was asking, Survival Living, what size solar generator do you suggest for powering a refrigerator? That is what your answer. You need to amp out and watt out your refrigerator first, okay? Now, if you got a big old double door refrigerator, odds are a solar generator is not going to run it very long, all right? So you need to get your kilowatt meter, like $20 on either Harbor Freight or Amazon, plug in for an hour, actually amp out everything, and it'll tell you how many amps you use when that compressor kicks on. So that's going to be your killer right there, that compressor. And it'll tell you how many watts you're going to use. Now you can shop around for a solar generator for that. What we've done is we've geared down to a mini fridge. Our mini fridge, we're going to run that with our solar, no problem, all day, all night long. No issues at all. It has a low draw on it, and I know when I took solar generators and did testing on it, it would run them for 8 to 14 hours on just one charge. But it depends on, I mean, we're amping out. It shows when the compressor kicks on, I had like 50 watts draw on a mini fridge, compared to a side by side. You know, that's going to kick on 1200, 1500 watts right then. Some of even more than that. So you got to amp out what you're using and then build off of that. Same when you're building a solar grid, you got to see what it is you're trying to power up. So if you have a refrigerator and you just go get 500 watts of power and only two 100 amp hour batteries, it ain't going to do it. So you got to look at what you want to use.
Yeah, it's really possible though. I would just encourage you that it is definitely possible. I've created 2 solar systems, and I'm not a numbers guy where I necessarily do everything that Joe just said. I kind of throw it together and find out if it works, and if it doesn't work, I'm like, oh, I guess I needed more batteries or whatever.
Yeah.
I did create a solar system that was specifically designed to run my refrigerator. And this is to what you had said earlier, Joe, where, if you're going to put solar on your house, don't worry about putting the whole damn house on solar. You can just start with certain critical systems. Back in 2009, up here in New England, we had an ice storm that knocked out power for like a week and a half at my house. This is when I started down my journey of being a prepper, because I was like, that was really uncomfortable. I don't want to do that again. How can I make it so I never have to do that again? So my big issues were having access to water from my well, because I had a well pump that needed electricity to run, and having my refrigerator run. Fortunately, the ice storm happened in winter, so I was able to move food outside into coolers and stuff. It was awkward, but I made it work. But the refrigerator was one thing I wanted to make sure I could run off of solar. And what I ended up doing, I had a 2,000 watt inverter, which I bought, and I had 6 deep cycle lead acid batteries. I forget how many amp hours they have, but I remember they were $135 each. And with those things, oftentimes you kind of get what you pay for. So that's as good of an indication as any. But I was definitely able to do it. And the power did get knocked out a number of times, and the batteries had no trouble keeping the thing together. The place I'm in right now, I did an entire house solar system, and I do remember all the numbers on that one. And we have an inverter that can handle 6,000 watts at one time. That's its max output that it can kick out. And we have, what is it? I think 10 kilowatt hours of lithium ferrophosphate batteries. And that is way overkill for our house. I bought it because I was pricing around to see if I could get a contractor to put the panels on our roof. And I actually talk about this in the video that I released today, where I was looking for someone to do. I'm afraid of heights. I build all these houses and I put the roofs on, but I hate being up high in the air. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to tempt fate. If I can hire someone to put the panels on my roof and just do all that, you know, I'll go that route. Well, the cheapest quote that I got for someone putting a system on my house was $140,000. And I just thought that was insane, that, you know, so much money, because I built some of my own systems and were like, you know, several $1,000s, but not like tens of thousands of dollars. Never a system as big as what I was thinking about doing, but, you know, I'm like, you know, you scale it up a little. It doesn't turn into $140,000. Well, I did some digging myself, and I found a place where I could get all the materials from, you know, the solar panels, the inverters, the charge controllers, you know, and all the wires, all the stuff that was involved in it. And it actually was that $20,000 that you mentioned, Joe, earlier on, but it was a whole house system. And that's what we have here. It was a $20,000 system. I put it in myself. My dad helped me. He's always helped me with stuff. It's great to have family for that type of thing. And, you know, all the emotional things that come with family as well, of course. But you know, we put it in, and that system is insane overkill for this house. The amount that we usually drain the batteries on any given night, and this light that's on me right now, the camera that I'm being recorded with, my computer, everything in the house right now is all being run off solar, and it's nighttime here. And we barely dent our batteries more than like 10% every day. Like it'll be the end of the day, and they're barely down 10%, usually like 5% or something like that. So it's very doable. That's all I would say, is that I think this is another one of those things that that's a myth in our culture, that like solar would be wonderful if it worked. It does. It's really wonderful. You know, I'll never have to pay an electric bill again. We're actually still connected to the grid. We're not sending any power to the grid. We bought batteries. I did not want to do the grid connect or anything. I know I could be like slipping some power out to the grid, but there's all these extra regulations you have to get involved with if you're going to do that. And they make sense, you know, so you don't kill people and other nasty things like that. So we just cut ourselves off from the grid, and we've just been running like that. And it's just great. You know, here in New England, you know, in the winter, there's power outages, and it's not a part of my thinking anymore. You know, the idea about, oh, there's a storm coming in, we should, like, you know, do anything you need with electricity because we may have the storm knock out our power. It's just nice to be freed from all that. And that's what it comes down to with all of prepping, really, is like, you don't have to worry about like, oh, what if I don't have the food I need at the grocery store? Don't worry, you already have it in your pantry. You don't have to worry about the storm coming through. It's really freeing. I think a lot of people think that prepping has to do with fear. And for me, prepping has everything to do with just not wanting hassles in life. I mean, who wants to be hassled? And the more that you prep for things and you're ready for them, the less of a hassle they are. That's my approach to it. It's really nice and freeing and relaxing and low stress, not having to worry about any of this stuff, and not having to create the cognitive dissonance that we see in a lot of people in order for them to like not accept that the things that that are real in the world are real, so that they cannot worry about them. Like, not having to do all that to your brain, and just to be able to live in the real world and be okay with it and know that you're fine. I know I've gone on enough about that. I think it's wonderful. It's really nice to not have that much stress.
Well, one thing with solar, I mean, if your battery bank's large enough, you got days of power when the power is out. Let's just say that it's completely overcast and you get very low draw, because they actually have solar panels. That's what we have. Even if it's overcast, I'm still getting a draw. It's not as much as a full-blown sunny day, but I still get a draw. And if we got a large enough battery,
they still trickle in. Yeah.
So, you know, you're only using 10% of your battery bank. It's nice having much larger. I mean, that's what I want to continue building on mine. Limited space. I can't put too many batteries where we're at, but it's enough to run us. I mean, we can run it up to 3 days as long as we're not running the air condition and complete overcast, you know.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for the way that you're doing it too. For me, I have one system, you know, with one battery bank, one inverter. I get technically the 2 charge controllers because I have 2 solar panel arrays, but it's one system. If I ever have a problem with that system, especially the battery, and someday, I mean, batteries are awful, aren't they? I mean, they eventually are, there's some kind of a problem with batteries. I only have one system. Now, technically, I have another system. It runs my root cellar. You know, I'd have rudimentary power because I've got my old lead acid batteries and everything. But the way you're doing it, Joe, is actually really kind of clever, because if you were to, you know, keep the system you have and then start adding to it, not by necessarily getting a bigger battery array, but creating a secondary whole system. So one of your systems runs, your refrigerator and your air conditioner or whatever, and then another system runs, say your microwave and your lighting or your computer or whatever. If one of the systems goes down, you still got the entire other system. So that modularity, I think, is a really great idea, and it's not something that I necessarily built into this house, but I think there's a lot to be said for that, where you're never going to have your entire house go down at any one time.
Yeah, and that's the thing, having everything tied in on just one inverter, everything tied into one charge controller. That was my biggest concern. If one of them was to fail, of course I keep so much extra parts and stuff. I just replace it. Yeah. But let's say something major is going on and I can't get to that part, or whatever.
Yeah.
I know that right there's off, but the rest of the stuff's running, and I could either route it, I could just take the plug out and plug into the other one. It puts a big strain on that system, but it's built where it can take it if necessary until that replacement part's replaced. Yeah. But yeah, it takes some time to play around with it, but it's, like you, I'm sure you'll agree, it's not rocket science. It really isn't.
No. If I can figure it out, it's not.
I figured it out, and I'm like, okay, this thing was, I remember before I first started doing it, I was going to the library, getting every single book on solar I could. And that actually scared me because of everything they were saying about it. I'm like,
it's daunting.
This stuff will kill you. Just think of it as DC current. You'll be okay. All right. So just don't play Sparky or anything. But I've never had any electric pop or anything like that. I'm just a redneck welder. But nothing major has ever happened with it. I've dropped a panel. That sucked. Because that did shatter on me because it actually fell on a center block. But it was a under $100 panel. It was a 100-watt panel. Well, for the size I was building, I was okay with that compared to the other ones we got in storage. Those are 400-watt ones, and those weren't cheap. So I'm glad I'm not dropping that. That's going to be the array we build later. But we keep the spare parts and stuff. That way, if we need it, we got it. So, yeah. All right, guys. So we are coming up on an hour, guys, and I try to keep everything down on an hour. Praxis, I definitely do appreciate you being here. I would like to have you back on more. Maybe we can work on some scripting thing, but we kind of went off the fly with this thing. It turned out pretty good in my opinion. So I look forward to having
better. I'll be honest, Joe. I was expecting better. Okay.
I don't know, man. Come on. I'm in somebody else's house filming. This ain't my house. This is a family member's. I tried using the trailer, and I really thought I was gonna have to use the truck. Using my little truck live streams. I'm like, man, I really don't have to go back to the truck again. So I was able to get.
You should have seen me before this thing. My computer was getting updates. I didn't even know what I was going to be. I thought I was going to have to go to my phone or some crazy thing. Yeah.
To all Ramons, I definitely do appreciate you being here. Virginia Roots, I do see you. CJ Blaze, thank you so much for being here, taking care of things. To everybody in the chat, guys, I do appreciate the support you being here. Everything from everybody that's actually donated by super chat that's going to be helping us with our projects between our survival buckets and other preparedness food for a community during disaster. That's something I don't like using the word pride, but that is something we are pushing ourselves on. We want to be able to actually be able to help people during this, a natural disaster. Rule of law is still around. It's people that are suffering after disaster. And because I'm in a location where we're always getting hit by hurricane weather, or close by where I can actually get there and actually provide some type of aid. That's what we're working on with that. To everybody else in the chat, I appreciate you being here. Your support, just watching our videos, sharing them out, liking them, that actually helps our channel. It helps us massively. I can't thank you enough. And again, if you haven't been over there to Praxis Prepper, please make sure you go over there, subscribe, but don't just subscribe and leave. Watch his videos. Make sure you click that icon, that bell icon, that you get his notifications. He's non-BS with his stuff. If he's showing you something, it's because he's actually something he does. And that's why I like talking to him about things, because he's actually putting it in implement, showing the thing actually works. He doesn't just jump up and start talking about what you need to be doing. He's showing you what he's doing. So again, guys, definitely appreciate it. Praxis, got anything to say before we close out?
No, I appreciate you having me here. Thanks.
All right, guys. So we're gonna wrap everything up. Praxis, if you just hold on for a minute, I'm gonna talk to you on the backstage. So don't go anywhere. Everybody, we appreciate the support. And for everyone that's here tonight, thank you so much, and I'll catch y'all later.